The first thing my wife said after the crash was, "Don't let him take my phone." She was still bleeding. The windshield had shattered across the front seats. Rain was pouring through the broken glass, and I was kneeling beside her in the wreckage, trying to keep her conscious. "Who?" I asked. She gripped my wrist with surprising strength. "Ethan, our manager." I looked toward the other car. Ethan was standing 20 feet away, pale and trembling. "Why would Ethan take your phone?" My wife stared at me. Then her expression changed. Not fear, confusion. She whispered, "Because he's lying?" That was the moment everything in our marriage began to change. My wife, Lena Vale, was one of the most famous actresses in the country. Millions knew her face. Millions followed her interviews, her movies, her charity work. But almost nobody knew the woman behind the cameras. I did, or at least I thought I did. I had been with Lena for 9 years, married to her for 4. I knew how she took her coffee, which song she played when she was nervous, and how she always reached for my hand under a restaurant table when she felt overwhelmed. I had also spent years protecting her from people who wanted something from her. I managed her private schedule. I handled contracts. I stayed awake when she came home exhausted. Whenever reporters asked what Lena owed her success to, she usually smiled and said, "Good people around me." She never mentioned me. I never asked her to. That was what love meant to me. Until the crash. At the hospital, Lena slept for almost 18 hours. When she finally opened her eyes, I was sitting beside her. "Hey," I whispered. She looked at me, then suddenly turned toward the nurse. "Your son isn't sick." The nurse froze. Lena frowned. "You're worried because your husband told you he might lose his job if you take time off." The nurse's face went white. I stared at Lena. "Lena." She looked frightened. "I didn't mean to say that." "What did you hear?" She pressed her palms against her temples. "Everything." I laughed nervously. "What does that mean?" She looked at me. "I can hear what people are hiding." I thought it was the medication. Then the doctor entered. He smiled and said, "Your wife is recovering beautifully." Lena immediately whispered, "That's not what you're thinking." The doctor stopped. "You're wondering whether the damage to my brain will become permanent." Silence. The doctor slowly lowered his clipboard. I felt cold. Lena had never met him before, and she was right. That evening, she discovered something even stranger. When a nurse entered the room, Lena suddenly looked at me. "Don't trust her." "Why?" "Because she took something from your jacket." I checked my pocket. My wedding ring wasn't there. The nurse dropped it onto the table. She had found it beside the bed. But Lena shook her head. "No, she had it before she entered." The nurse started crying. She confessed she had picked it up because she wanted to sell it. That was when I stopped believing this was confusion. Something had happened to Lena, and I was about to learn that hearing other people's secrets could destroy a marriage faster than any ordinary betrayal. For the next week, Lena barely spoke about her ability. She was terrified of it. Whenever someone entered the room, their voice seemed to reach her twice. Once to their mouth, and once to their thoughts. She couldn't control which secrets she heard. A doctor was secretly considering leaving the hospital. A visitor had cheated on his fiancée. A nurse hated her supervisor. Even the receptionist had stolen money from the donation box. Lena began wearing headphones whenever she could. But the worst part was that she could hear things about me. At first, I thought that was a blessing. I had nothing to hide, or so I believed. One afternoon, our manager, Ethan, arrived. He brought flowers. "Lena, you scared everyone." She stared at him. Then her face went pale. "Why did you tell the studio I was unstable?" Ethan's smile disappeared. "What?" "You told them I couldn't complete the next film." "That isn't true." Lena looked at me. "He's lying." I felt anger rising. "Ethan, what did you say to the studio?" "Nothing serious." Lena suddenly covered her ears. "Stop." Ethan stepped back. "What?" "Stop thinking about it." He stared at her like she had become a stranger. I asked him to leave. After the door closed, Lena looked at me. "He's been moving money." "How much?" "I don't know." She swallowed. "But there's more." "What?" "He told the studio you were controlling me." That hurt more than it should have. Because I had spent years defending Lena from exactly that accusation. "I never controlled you." "I know." "Do you?" She reached for my hand. "I know." For a few days, we became closer than ever. I thought perhaps the accident had saved us. Then Lena heard something at dinner. We were at home. She had just returned from the hospital, still weak when my phone rang. It was Lena's younger sister, Mara. I answered. Hey. Mara said she needed to speak privately. I walked into the kitchen. Lena stayed in the living room. When I returned, she was staring at me. What did Mara say? She needs help with a legal problem. Lena shook her head. No. What? She wasn't calling about herself. I sat down. Then what was she calling about? Lena's voice trembled. She said you should convince me to sell the lake house. I frowned. Why would she care about the lake house? Because she knows about the debt. I stared at her. What debt? Lena looked confused. You don't know? No. She lowered her eyes. Mara has been borrowing money from me for 3 years. I remembered all the times Lena had asked me to sign transfers. Those weren't charity payments? No. Then what were they? Loans. I felt something inside me crack. Not because of the money, because I suddenly realized how much of Lena's life I had been kept outside of. She touched my arm. I was going to tell you. When? She didn't answer. That night, I lay awake beside her. The woman I loved had always seemed like an open book. Now I realized there were entire chapters one had never been allowed to read. And somewhere beneath that realization was a quieter fear. If Lena could hear everyone else's secrets, how long would it take before she discovered mine? I had one secret. It wasn't betrayal. It wasn't money. But it was something I had hidden for years. And after the crash, I wasn't sure I could keep it from her forever. The next morning, Lena asked me the question I had been dreading. What are you hiding from me? I nearly dropped the coffee mug in my hand. She was sitting by the window, wearing an oversized sweater and staring at the rain. I'm not hiding anything. She smiled sadly. You are. I put the mug down. Lena, I heard you last night. My heart stopped. You heard what? When you were asleep. I stared at her. She rubbed her temples. You said, not yet. She isn't ready. I remembered the dream. The old studio. The contract. The company I had quietly been building for years. But none of it was what she thought. I sat across from her. I've been working on something. Her eyes narrowed. For how long? 6 years. She looked genuinely shocked. 6 years. I nodded. Before Lena became famous, I had worked as a sound engineer. I loved recording ordinary sounds, the rhythm of rain, footsteps on wooden floors, voices in crowded markets. But I also loved technology. 6 years earlier, I had started designing a privacy system for celebrities and public figures. It was supposed to detect unauthorized recording devices and protect private conversations. I called it Echo Guard. I never told Lena because I didn't want her to think I was trying to profit from her fame. You build a company? Not exactly. I built the technology. A friend helped me register the patents. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted it to work before I talked about it. She stared at me. And now, the first major security firm wants to buy it. Lena was silent. Then she smiled. You were going to surprise me. I was. For the first time since the accident, she laughed. You idiot. I laughed too. For a moment, everything felt normal. Then she suddenly stopped. Her eyes moved toward the front door. What? She whispered. Someone outside is thinking about you. I stood. Who? Ethan. I opened the door. Nobody was there. But on the floor was an envelope. Inside was a copy of contract. It was my signature. I stared at it. The contract transferred ownership of Echo Guard to Ethan's company. I had never signed it. Lena looked over my shoulder. He's thinking you won't notice. My hands went cold. The signature looked almost perfect. Almost. But there was one tiny difference. My middle initial was missing. I had designed my signature that way years ago. Ethan didn't know. Forgery, I whispered. Lena nodded. And there's something worse. What? He didn't do it alone. I looked at her. Who helped him? She closed her eyes, then whispered a name. Mara, my wife's sister. The woman Lena had trusted for years. I wanted to call the police immediately. But Lena stopped me. Don't. Why? Because if we confront them now, they'll know what I can hear. She was right. For the first time, I saw the value of her strange power. It wasn't a weapon. It was information. And information was dangerous when people believed their secrets were safe. We decided to stay quiet. That afternoon, Ethan called. Good news, he said cheerfully. The studio wants Lena back on set. Lena glanced at me. I could see she was listening to something I couldn't hear. What did he say? I whispered after the call. He said the studio wants me back. And what is he thinking? She looked at me. He's thinking that once I'm back on set, he'll control my contracts. My jaw tightened. Then Lena said something that changed everything. He's also thinking about the night of the crash. I froze. What about it? He knows why it happened. We didn't sleep that night. At 2 in the morning, Lena sat at the dining table with every light turned off. I watched her from across the room. What did you hear? She shook her head. I don't know yet. Then what do you know? That Ethan wasn't supposed to be driving behind us. I remembered the crash. It had been raining heavily. Lena's driver had suddenly changed lanes. A truck had appeared. Then everything had happened too quickly. We had always assumed it was an accident. Lena stared at me. It wasn't planned exactly. What does that mean? Ethan had someone following us. Why? She closed her eyes. To scare you. I felt my blood run cold. Me? He wanted you to stop investigating the company accounts. I couldn't breathe. Months before the crash, I had noticed unusual payments connected to Lena's production company. I had quietly started checking them. I thought someone was stealing from her. I never imagined the person was Ethan. But Lena wasn't finished. He didn't know the truck would lose control. So the crash was supposed to be a warning? Yes. I stood and walked toward the window. Rain tapped against the glass. Suddenly, a memory came back. 3 years earlier, Lena and I had been sitting on the steps outside our first apartment. We had almost no money then. She had just received her first major acting role. She had taken my hand and said, "If I ever become famous, don't let me become someone you can't recognize." I had promised. Now I wondered whether fame had changed her, or whether fame had simply hidden the people around her. The next morning, Lena returned to work. The studio wanted to film a commercial before her official comeback. Cameras surrounded her. Everyone smiled. Everyone pretended nothing had happened. Then Lena walked onto the set and stopped. She looked at the director. "You don't want me here." The director froze. "Of course I do. You're thinking about replacing me." He looked terrified. Lena smiled. "Don't worry. I'm not angry." I stood behind the monitor, watching. She was learning to live with the power. Not every secret needed to be exposed. Not every lie needed to be punished. But then Ethan arrived. He approached me. "We need to talk." "About what?" "Echo Guard." I said nothing. He lowered his voice. "You should sell." "No. You don't understand how this industry works." "I understand perfectly." His smile disappeared. "You're making a mistake." He walked away. Lena watched him. Then she whispered, "He's afraid." "Of what?" "You." I almost laughed. "I don't have that kind of power." She shook her head. "Not yet." That evening, something unexpected happened. A woman named Nora Chun approached me outside the studio. She had been one of Lena's junior producers. "I know about the fake contract," she said. I stared at her. "How?" "Because I helped create it." My stomach dropped. "You?" She shook her head quickly. "I didn't know it was fake. Ethan told me Lena had approved everything." "Why are you telling me now?" She looked toward the building. "Because I heard him talking." "What did he say?" "He said the crash didn't solve the problem." I felt my chest tighten. "What problem?" Nora looked at Lena. "Your wife." Then she handed me a small flash drive. "There are payment records on this." I took it. "Why trust me?" Nora gave a bitter smile. "Because Ethan thinks I stole money from the production company." "And did you?" "No." She paused. "But I know who did." Before I could ask another question, she walked away. Lena came over. "What happened?" I showed her the drive. She looked at it. Then her face changed. "I can hear someone." "Who?" She turned toward the parking garage. "Mara." We followed her. My wife's sister was standing beside a car, speaking to Ethan. Lena closed her eyes. A few seconds later, she opened them. "They're talking about the money." "What money?" "The money they took from my charity." I stared at her. That charity had been Lena's proudest project. She had spent years believing every dollar helped children in rural hospitals. Now she was hearing the truth. And for the first time, I saw something break behind her eyes. Not anger. Trust. She whispered, "How many people have been lying to me?" I didn't know what to say. Then she looked at me. "Maybe everyone." I reached for her hand. She pulled away. Not because she hated me, because she was afraid. Afraid that if she listened long enough, she would discover that even the person standing beside her had become a stranger. And That was the moment I realized our biggest problem was no longer Ethan. It was whether Lena and I could survive knowing everything. For 3 days, Lena barely spoke to me. We still lived in the same house. We still ate at the same table. But there was a distance between us that felt wider than the city outside our windows. I didn't blame her. Her world had become unbearable. Every stranger carried a secret. Every friend carried an unspoken thought. And now, every time she looked at me, she wondered what she might hear. One night, she finally asked, "Tell me everything." I knew exactly what she meant. So I did. I told her about EchoGuard. I told her about the patents. I told her about the investors. And I told her the one thing I had never wanted her to know. I turned down a major investment 6 months ago. Why? Because they wanted to use your name. She looked at me. They offered me enough money to make us wealthy, but they wanted your endorsement before the technology was even finished. Why didn't you tell me? Because I knew you'd say yes. She frowned. Of course I would. Exactly. I smiled weakly. You've always wanted to help people. I was afraid someone would use that against you. She looked down. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "You should have trusted me." I know. It was the first honest argument we'd had in years. And, strangely, it brought us closer. But the next morning, everything collapsed again. The studio released a statement saying Lena had become emotionally unstable after the accident. They claimed she was experiencing paranoia. The media exploded. Within hours, headlines appeared everywhere. Lena Vale's mental health concerns grow. Actress struggling after traumatic crash. Studio considers replacement. Lena sat silently reading the articles. Then she looked at me. "Ethan." I nodded. "He's trying to make everyone doubt me. He knows about your ability." "Not completely. He knows enough." That afternoon, the studio called. They wanted Lena to sign a medical waiver declaring herself unfit to manage her own contracts. She refused. Then they threatened to suspend her. I expected her to fight. Instead, she put the paper down. "Fine." I stared at her. "Fine." She smiled. "I've spent my whole life proving people wrong." She stood. "I'm tired." That was the first time I saw her begin to change. She wasn't surrendering. She was choosing where to spend her energy. Meanwhile, I gave Nora the flash drive. She had copies of the financial records. Together, we discovered something much larger than Ethan's theft. Money had been moved through 3 production companies, 2 charities, and a private investment firm. My name appeared on one of the documents. So did Lena's. But neither of us had authorized it. Someone had been using our identities. Then Nora found the connection. The investment firm was partly owned by Ethan's brother, and the man who handled its legal paperwork was Mara's husband. I stared at the screen. So the whole family is involved. Nora shook her head. "Not all of them." "Who isn't?" She hesitated. "Mara." I looked at her. "What?" She signed some documents, but I don't think she knew what they were. That night, Lena confronted her sister. Mara arrived crying. "I didn't steal from you." Lena stared at her. "You signed the documents." "I didn't understand them." "You borrowed money from me." "I was desperate." "Why didn't you tell me?" Mara looked at me. "Because Ethan said he'd destroy your career if I didn't cooperate." Lena's face went pale. "What did he threaten?" Mara whispered. "He said he'd release the recording." "What recording?" Mara looked toward me. Then Lena heard something. Her expression changed. "He has a recording of us." I remember the studio, the private meeting, the night I had confronted Ethan about the missing money. I had thought nobody else was there, but apparently someone had been listening. Mara covered her face. "I thought he only wanted money." "What does he want now?" Lena asked. Mara didn't answer. She didn't need to. Lena had already heard the truth. "He wants EchoGuard." I looked at Lena. Suddenly everything made sense. Ethan wasn't just trying to steal money. He wanted the technology that could expose hidden recordings. He wanted the one invention capable of destroying the very system he had built his fortune on. And that meant the crash hadn't been about stopping me. It had been about getting access to my invention. I spent the next week preparing for war. Not revenge. Evidence. There was a difference. I hired an attorney. Nora gathered documents. Mara agreed to cooperate. Lena stopped giving interviews. For the first time in years, she disappeared from social media. People assumed she was broken. They were wrong. She was thinking. One evening, she came into my office carrying a folder. I found something. What? The night of the crash. She placed photographs on the desk. They show the road, the truck, our damaged car, and a black sedan several meters behind us. I stared at it. That car was following us. Yes. Who was driving? Lena shook her head. I don't know. Then she closed her eyes. I can hear him. What? The driver. She described the voice. A man speaking through a phone. I searched old company records. The voice belonged to a private security contractor who had worked for Ethan. We had enough evidence to expose him. But Lena stopped me. Not yet. Why? Because there's someone higher. I stared at her. Higher than Ethan? She nodded. He's not the person making decisions. Then who is? She looked frightened. The studio owner. I sat back. The studio owner, Victor Hale, was one of the most powerful men in the entertainment industry. He had supported Lena's career from the beginning. He had attended our wedding. He had sent flowers when she was injured. He had always treated me with respect. Or so I thought. Lena whispered. He knows. About the fraud? Everything. I couldn't believe it. He knew about the crash? Yes. And the money? Yes. Then why hasn't he stopped Ethan? Lena opened her eyes. Because he profits from it. That night, I realized something painful. The people who had hurt us weren't strangers. They were people we had invited into our lives. People who had eaten at our table. People who had congratulated us. People who had called themselves family. The next morning, Lena received a message from Victor. Come alone. We need to talk. She showed it to me. I'll go. No. I need to hear him. You don't know what he'll do. She smiled. I don't have to trust him. She touched my hand. I trust you. That sentence stayed with me. We arranged for Nora to monitor the meeting from a nearby room. Lena entered Victor's office alone. Victor smiled. You look better. I am. You should listen to me. Ethan has made mistakes. You knew. His smile faded. Knew what? The accounts. Silence. Lena continued. The fake contracts. Victor leaned back. You've been listening. Yes. He looked at her strangely. Then he said the sentence that confirmed everything. You really can hear them, can't you? Lena froze. Victor knew. He had known. Perhaps from the beginning. He leaned forward. Do you know how dangerous that ability is? Dangerous to whom? To everyone. He offered her a deal. He would restore her career. He would erase every accusation. He would make the media believe the crash had been an unfortunate medical event. All Lena had to do was give him one thing. Echo Guard. She refused. Victor's expression hardened. You don't understand what you're rejecting. Lena stood. No, you don't understand what you're losing. She walked out. But before she reached the elevator, Victor said something that stopped her. You think your husband is protecting you. Lena turned. Victor smiled. He isn't the only one who kept secrets. When she returned home, she was silent. I knew immediately. What did he say? She looked at me. Then she asked the question I had feared most. Why did you really build Echo Guard? I swallowed. For privacy. She shook her head. That isn't the whole truth. No. What aren't you telling me? I looked at her. And for the first time, I understood that even a marriage built on love could be damaged by too many secrets. I had hidden my invention to protect her. But there was another reason. A reason I had never told anyone. Not even Lena. And when I finally confessed it, I knew our relationship would never be the same again. I built Echo Guard because of you. Lena stared at me. I expected anger. Instead, she looked confused. Because of me? I nodded. 6 years ago, before you became famous, you were followed home. Her expression changed. I remembered that night clearly. We had just moved into our first apartment. Lena had been offered a small role in a television series, and a photographer had started waiting outside the building. One evening, he followed her into the parking garage. I confronted him. He laughed. Then he showed me pictures he had taken inside our apartment through the window. That night, Lena cried. She told me she couldn't live like that. I promised I would protect her. But promises weren't enough. So I started learning. Security systems, audio detection, signal interference, encrypted communications. Eventually, Echo Guard was born. I never told you because I didn't want you to feel responsible for my obsession. Lena's eyes filled with tears. You did all that because someone frightened me? I did it because I couldn't stand knowing that the person I loved wasn't safe. She looked down. For several seconds, there was only silence. Then she whispered, "And you never wanted credit." "No." "Why?" I smiled. "Because you were the one standing in front of the cameras. I was happy standing behind them." She walked toward me. Then she hugged me. For the first time in weeks, I felt her arms around me without hesitation. But our peace lasted only one night. The next morning, every major news channel reported that Lena had secretly been declared mentally unstable. A leaked medical report appeared online. It contained details from her hospital stay. Private details. Details only 3 people should have known. Her doctor, the hospital administrator, and Victor. Lena looked at the screen. "He wants the world to believe I'm unreliable." I nodded. "Because if people trust your ability, they might believe what you heard." She looked at me. "And if they believe me, Victor falls." That afternoon, our lawyer filed an emergency injunction against the studio. The battle became public. Reporters surrounded our house. Fans argued online. Some defended Lena. Others called her dangerous. I watched her sit quietly on the sofa. "Are you okay?" "No." She looked at me. "But I will be." That was when she made a decision. She would stop acting. At least for now. The announcement shocked everyone. Lena had been at the height of her career, but she released a simple statement. She said she needed time to recover and would not return to the industry until she could work without surrendering her dignity. No accusations. No dramatic speech. Just one decision. For the first time, I saw my wife choose herself. Then came a consequence. The studio terminated her contract. Ethan celebrated. Victor assumed he had one, but he had made one mistake. He had underestimated what Lena would do with freedom. She came into my office one morning and looked at the Echo Guard prototypes. "I want to help." I laughed. "You hate technology." "I hate being helpless more." We began working together. Slowly. No cameras. No agents. No assistants. Just us. She tested the system in real environments. I redesigned the interface. Nora handled operations. Mara helped with the financial investigation. For months, nothing happened. We lost money. We argued. Some prototypes failed. One overheated during testing and filled the room with smoke. Lena coughed and said, "Your invention is trying to kill me." I laughed so hard I nearly fell over. It was the first time our home felt like home again. Then a technology company offered to license Echo Guard. They weren't interested in Lena's fame. They wanted the technology. That mattered to me. We accepted. Within a year, Echo Guard became one of the fastest-growing privacy companies in the country. And Lena became its public face only because she chose to. She wasn't selling herself anymore. She was building something. But success brought one unexpected problem. Victor came looking for us. He arrived at our headquarters without an appointment. I watched him enter through the glass doors. Once, I would have stood immediately. I didn't. "Victor," I said. He looked around. "This is impressive." Lena stepped out of her office. "You shouldn't be here." He smiled. "You're doing well." "I'm doing better." His smile weakened. "I came to make peace." "No," Lena said. "You came because you need something." Victor's eyes shifted. For a moment, Lena went still. Then she whispered, "Your company is losing investors." Victor said nothing. "You're thinking about selling." His face tightened. "Stop doing that." "Doing what?" "Listening." Lena looked at him calmly. "I can't always control it." He stared at her. "You've become dangerous." She shook her head. "No, I became independent." That sentence seemed to hurt him more than an insult. Victor offered us a deal. He wanted to buy Echo Guard. The amount was enormous. More money than Lena and I could spend in our lifetimes. I looked at her. She didn't even hesitate. "No." Victor frowned. "You could retire tomorrow." "I don't want to retire." "You could have everything." Lena smiled. "I already have what I want." Victor left. But the consequences of our refusal arrived 2 days later. A lawsuit. Then another. Then accusations that Echo Guard had stolen technology from a competitor. Our investors panicked. Employees started worrying about their jobs. For the first time since leaving the studio, Lena looked uncertain. "I don't want everyone to lose their work because of me." I took her hand. They're here because they believe in what we're building. But what if they lose everything? Then we fight honestly. She looked at me. You really don't know how to give up. I learned from you. We fought, not with threats, not with revenge, with evidence. Nora uncovered financial transfers linking Victor to the fraudulent companies. Mara testified about the pressure Ethan had used against her. The security contractor admitted he had been paid to follow us before the crash. And then came the final piece. The recording. The one Victor had threatened to release. It contained a conversation between Victor and Ethan from the night before the crash. They discussed frightening me into abandoning the investigation. They didn't directly order the crash, but they knowingly created a dangerous situation. That was enough. The truth became public. Ethan was arrested for fraud and financial crimes. Victor faced multiple investigations. The studio's board removed him. Mara cooperated fully and accepted responsibility for the documents she had signed. The consequences weren't dramatic. There was no screaming courtroom victory, just paperwork, testimony, financial restitution, careers ending, people being forced to answer for what they had done. Months later, Lena and I stood outside the courthouse. Reporters surrounded us. One shouted, "Lena, do you forgive Victor?" She stopped. I expected her to walk away. Instead, she answered, "I don't need to forgive him publicly." Another reporter asked, "Do you regret what happened?" Lena looked at me. Then she said, "I regret the pain. I don't regret becoming someone who finally understood her own worth." That evening, we went home. No cameras, no reporters, just us. Lena sat beside me on the balcony. I can still hear secrets. Does it bother you? Sometimes. She leaned against my shoulder. But I've learned something. What? Knowing everything doesn't make you wise. I looked at her. What does? She smiled. Knowing what deserves your attention. I kissed her forehead. For the first time, the strange power didn't feel like a curse. It felt like something she had learned to live with. Then she received an unexpected message. A major international company wanted Lena to lead a new privacy foundation. The position would take her around the world. She looked at me. I don't know if I want to go. I smiled. You should. Without you. I'll come when I can. She stared at me. You're not afraid I'll become too independent? I laughed. No. Why? Because that's the woman I fell in love with. She smiled. But neither of us knew that our next journey would bring us face to face with the person Lena had been avoiding for months. Her mother. And her mother had a secret that Lena had never heard before. Lena's mother had not spoken to her since the courthouse hearing. Not once. So when a message arrived asking us to visit her old home, Lena almost deleted it. Instead, she stared at the screen for a long time. I don't want to go. Then don't. She looked at me. You want to ask why? No. That answer surprised her. She smiled faintly. You've changed. I learned something from you. What? That loving someone doesn't mean forcing them to open every locked door. She eventually agreed to go. Her mother, Evelyn, lived in a quiet coastal town 3 hours away. When we arrived, she was waiting outside. She looked older than I remembered. She hugged Lena. Lena remained stiff. Why did you call me? Evelyn looked at me. Because there's something you deserve to know. Inside the house, she placed an old box on the table. It contained photographs, letters, and financial documents. Lena looked through them. Then she froze. What is this? Your father. Lena's father had died when she was 16. She had always believed he had left behind debts. But the documents showed something else. He had owned a small engineering company. And years before his death, he had designed a security technology similar to the basic concept behind EchoGuard. I looked at Lena. She looked stunned. Did you know? Evelyn nodded. Your father wanted you to have it someday. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was afraid. Of what? Evelyn looked at me. People who wanted the technology. Lena sat down. Her father's company had been pressured by larger corporations. He had refused to sell. Then his business collapsed. Afterward, he died in what the family had always considered an accident. Lena whispered, You think it wasn't? I don't know. Evelyn's voice broke. But I never believed the official story. The revelation changed everything. EchoGuard wasn't merely something I had invented from scratch. The principles had come from my own research, but some of the ideas I had unknowingly developed mirrored work Lena's father had begun decades earlier. Lena cried quietly, not because of the technology, because she realized her father had left her something she had never known existed. A purpose. Her mother reached across the table. "I should have told you years ago." Lena looked at her. "Yes. I thought silence would protect you." "It didn't." "I know." There was no dramatic reconciliation. No perfect forgiveness. Just two people sitting together, admitting that fear had shaped their lives. Later that night, Lena and I walked along the beach. "You heard her secret." "Yes." "What did you think?" She shook her head. I didn't listen. I smiled. "Why?" "Because she was telling me herself." That answer stayed with me. The ability that once invaded every part of her life had become something she could control. She no longer needed to know every hidden thought. She could choose trust. A month later, we launched the Evelyn Vale Privacy Foundation. Its purpose was simple: help ordinary people protect their private conversations and personal data. No celebrity branding. No extravagant offices. Most of the money went toward research and free security tools. Lena insisted on that. "I spent years being surrounded by people who wanted access to me," she told me. "I want other people to have the right to close their doors." The foundation became successful. Lena's reputation changed completely. She was no longer just a famous actress. She became a respected advocate for privacy. And I remained beside her. Not behind her. Beside her. Then came the invitation we had never expected. The studio wanted Lena back. Not as an actress. As a producer. They wanted her to build a new division based on ethical entertainment practices. The offer was generous. I asked, "Do you want it?" She thought for a moment. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I don't want to spend the rest of my life running away from what happened." She accepted. But there was one condition. No secret contracts. No hidden financial arrangements. No surveillance. And no one would ever again be forced to sacrifice their dignity for a career. The studio agreed. For the first time, Lena returned to the building where everything had fallen apart. People stared. Some whispered. Some apologized. Others pretended they had always supported her. She heard all of them, but she didn't react. She simply walked forward. Then, near the old conference room, she stopped. Ethan's former office was empty. The door was open. Lena looked inside. I asked, "Want to go?" She shook her head. "No." "Why?" "Because there's nothing in there that belongs to me anymore." We walked away, and I thought that was the end of the story. It wasn't. 3 months later, Lena received a call from someone I had never heard of. A woman named Celia Hart. She claimed she had worked for Victor years earlier, and she possessed evidence connected to the night of Lena's crash. Evidence that could change everything again. Celia met us in a small cafe far from a city. She looked nervous. "I don't want money," she said. "Then why are you here?" I asked. She looked at Lena. "Because I owe you the truth." She placed a sealed envelope on the table. Inside was an old employee badge, a handwritten note, and a photograph. Lena picked up the photograph. It showed Victor standing beside a man we recognized, the private security contractor. But there was someone else in the picture, a young man. Lena stared at him. "Who is that?" Celia whispered his name. "Daniel Ross." I frowned. "Who?" "He was Victor's assistant." "What does he have to do with the crash?" Celia hesitated. "He was the one who arranged the surveillance." Lena looked at me. "Is he still alive?" "Yes." "Where?" Celia gave us an address. Daniel had disappeared from the entertainment industry after the investigation began. We found him living alone in a small apartment. When he saw Lena, he immediately closed the door. "Please leave." Lena stood outside. "I don't want revenge." Silence. "I want the truth." The door opened. Daniel looked exhausted. "I should have gone to the police years ago." "Why didn't you?" "Fear." "Of Victor?" "Yes." "Then why talk now?" He looked at me. "Because Victor destroyed himself. Ethan is gone. The company is gone." He stepped aside. "Come in." Daniel told us everything. He had been instructed to monitor me because Victor suspected I was investigating the missing money. The night of the crash, he had been following us. He admitted that he had called the security contractor, but he insisted he had never intended for anyone to be hurt. "Then why didn't you stop him?" Daniel looked at Lena. "Because I was a coward." That answer hurt more than an excuse would have. He gave us recordings, messages, payment receipts, enough to close the remaining gaps in the investigation. But Lena didn't celebrate. On the drive home, she was quiet. Finally, she said, "I thought knowing the truth would make me feel better. Doesn't it?" "No." She looked out the window. "It just makes me sad." I reached for her hand. She held it. "I spent years thinking my biggest problem was being famous." She paused. "My biggest problem was believing everyone who said they loved me." I squeezed her fingers. "Not everyone." She looked at me. "You. And you." She smiled. "That's enough." Months passed. Our lives became quieter. Lena acted occasionally, but only in projects she genuinely cared about. Echo Guard expanded internationally. The foundation helped thousands of people. Mara rebuilt her life. She stopped borrowing money and began working at the foundation, where Lena gave her a chance without giving her blind trust. Their relationship became different. Not the old one, a healthier one. Evelyn visited more often. She and Lena still argued sometimes, but now they spoke honestly. As for me, I finally learned something I had missed for years. I didn't have to protect Lena from everything. She could protect herself. One evening, we stood on the balcony of our new home. Lena leaned against the railing. "Do you remember the first thing I said after the crash?" I smiled. "Don't let him take my phone." She laughed. I was terrified. "I know." And then I started hearing everyone's secrets. "You heard mine too." She looked at me. "I did." "Any regrets?" She thought about it. "Yes." "What?" "That I didn't understand you sooner." I shook my head. "You understood me when it mattered." She took my hand. Then she whispered something that made me laugh. "What?" "I can hear your secret right now." I raised an eyebrow. "What secret?" She smiled. "You're thinking about buying me that little house by the sea." I stared at her. "You're cheating." "I can't help it." "You absolutely can." She laughed. Then her expression softened. "I don't need it." "Why?" "Because home isn't a building." She rested her head against my shoulder. "It's the person who stays when there is nothing left to gain." I kissed her hair. For a long time, we simply stood there. The woman beside me had once been terrified of hearing what people hid. Now she understood that some secrets weren't worth uncovering, and some truths were worth waiting for. Still, one final thing remained unresolved. Lena's strange ability had never disappeared. And one morning, while we were having breakfast, she suddenly looked at me with tears in her eyes. "What happened?" She whispered. "I heard someone." "Who?" She smiled. "Someone who isn't here yet." I stared at her. "What does that mean?" She placed a hand gently over mine. "Nothing bad." Then she laughed. "For once, I'm going to let the future arrive without trying to hear it first." And that was exactly what we did. We stopped living for the secrets of yesterday. We stopped fearing the lies of tomorrow. And together, we built a life that didn't need anyone's permission to be ours. 3 years after the crash, people still asked Lena the same question. "Do you still hear secrets?" Whenever they asked, she smiled. Sometimes, they never understood what that answer meant. Neither did I, at first. The ability had never completely disappeared. Sometimes she would suddenly look at someone and know they were carrying grief. Sometimes she would hear a lie before the speaker finished saying it. But she had learned boundaries. She no longer treated every hidden thought as something she had the right to uncover. That changed her. It changed me too. Our company grew. The foundation opened offices in 3 countries. Lena returned to acting occasionally, but she chose smaller projects. No more contracts that demanded every part of her life. No more managers deciding what she should feel. No more pretending everything was perfect. And I finally stopped being afraid of stepping out of her shadow. Echo Guard had become my life's work. For years, I had believed my greatest achievement was protecting Lena. Eventually, I understood that my real achievement was helping people protect themselves. That was enough. Then one afternoon, I received an invitation to speak at a technology conference. The organizers wanted me to tell the story of Echo Guard. I almost refused. Lena looked at me. "Why?" "I don't like talking about myself. You spent 10 years telling everyone else how talented I am." She smiled. "It's your turn." I went. The room was full. When I walked onto the stage, I saw Lena sitting in the front row. She wasn't there as a celebrity. She was there as my wife. I told the audience about privacy, about trust, about how technology could protect people but could never replace judgment. Then someone asked me, "What inspired you to build EchoGuard?" I looked at Lena. She smiled. I answered honestly, "Love." The room applauded. But I wasn't finished. Love taught me to protect someone. Losing trust taught me that protection without respect becomes control. And rebuilding trust taught me that real partnership means standing beside someone, not in front of them. Lena's eyes filled with tears. After the speech, we returned home. That evening, she received a message from her mother. Evelyn wanted to see us. We drove to the coast. She was sitting on the porch when we arrived. "I have something for you," she told Lena. It was her father's old notebook. Lena opened it carefully. Inside were sketches of security systems, notes about privacy, and a sentence written on the final page. Technology should protect the person, not own the person. Lena touched the words. "You believe this?" "Yes," Evelyn said. "And you kept it all these years." "I was afraid to give it to you." Lena smiled sadly. "You don't have to be afraid anymore." Evelyn looked at me. "Neither do you." It was a small sentence, but I understood what it meant. For years, Evelyn had feared losing her daughter. Lena had feared losing herself. I had feared failing to protect her. We had all been living inside different versions of the same fear. Now we could finally let it go. That night, Lena and I walked along the beach. She held her father's notebook against her chest. "Do you think he'd be proud?" "Yes." "How do you know?" "Because you didn't become what they wanted." She smiled. "You didn't either." We stopped near the water. Lena looked at the horizon. "Do you remember when I thought hearing secrets was a curse?" "Yes." "I was wrong." "Ow." "It taught me something." "What?" "That people are complicated." She looked at me. "Some people lie because they're cruel. Some lie because they're afraid. Some lie because they're ashamed. Some keep secrets because they think they're protecting someone." She paused. "And some people tell the truth even when it costs them everything." I smiled. "Which kind do you want to be?" "The last kind." I kissed her forehead. Then she suddenly laughed. "What?" "I heard your secret." I sighed. "Again?" She nodded. "You're still thinking about that house." I laughed. "This time maybe—" She leaned against me. "Maybe we'll buy it." It sounded ordinary. A small dream. A peaceful one. And after everything we had survived, ordinary felt like a miracle. A year later, we bought the house by the sea. It wasn't large. It didn't have a pool or a private driveway. The paint was faded, the kitchen was tiny, and the roof needed repairs. Lena loved it immediately. "This feels like us," she said. We spent weekends fixing it. Sometimes we argued over furniture. Sometimes we burned dinner. Sometimes Lena fell asleep while I was talking. It was the happiest period of our marriage. Not because life had become perfect, because we had stopped demanding perfection from each other. One evening, a package arrived. Inside was a letter from the legal office handling the final settlement from the old studio. Ethan had completed his sentence. Victor's remaining assets had been liquidated to satisfy claims. Mara had repaid the money she had taken. Daniel had testified and disappeared from public life. The case was finally closed. I read the letter. Then I put it away. Lena noticed. "What is it?" "Nothing important." She smiled. "That's growth." "What?" "Once, that letter would have been the most important thing in the room." She was right. It wasn't anymore. Our past had consequences, but it no longer had power over us. That night, we sat on the porch. The sea was dark. The wind was cool. Lena rested her head against my shoulder. "Do you ever wish the crash never happened?" I thought about it. "Yes." She looked at me. "Really?" "Yes." I expected you to say no. I don't believe pain is necessary just because something good came after it. She smiled. "That's a very strange answer." "I mean it." I looked at the ocean. I would gladly erase the pain. And the lessons? I'd rather learn them another way. She was quiet. Then she said, "Me too." We sat there for a while. Then she took my hand. "I heard something today." "What?" "A secret." "Whose?" She smiled. "Mine." I looked at her. "What secret?" She took a breath. "I'm pregnant." For a moment, I couldn't speak. The woman who had heard the secrets of thousands of people was watching me with tears in her eyes. "Our baby." She nodded. I laughed. Then I cried. Then she laughed at me for crying. I pulled her into my arms. "What did you hear?" "Nothing." She smiled. I didn't listen. Why? Because I want this secret to become a surprise. Months later, our daughter was born. We named her Mira. The first time I held her, I understood something I had never understood before. There are some things in life you don't need to control. You don't need to know every secret. You don't need to predict every betrayal. You don't need to prepare for every loss. Sometimes, you simply need to be present. Lena became an amazing mother. She still heard things sometimes, but she never used her ability against Mira. She wanted our daughter to grow up believing that trust could exist without surveillance. One evening, years later, Mira asked her mother why she could hear people's secrets. Lena looked at me. Then she smiled. I don't know why. Is it scary? Sometimes. Are you special? Lena thought about it. Yes. Mira grinned. Because of your power? No. Then why? Lena looked at me. Because I learned that having power isn't what makes someone special. What is? Knowing when not to use it. Mira didn't completely understand, but she would someday. As for me, I sometimes thought about the man I had been before the crash. I had believed love meant sacrificing everything. I had believed protecting someone meant carrying every burden for them. I had believed silence was always kindness. I was wrong. Love is not hiding everything. Love is not controlling everything. Love is not staying simply because you once promised to. Love is choosing each other freely again and again. Lena once lost her career, her trust, and almost her marriage. But she found something greater. She found herself, and I found myself beside her. Not as her manager, not as her protector, not as the man standing behind a famous woman, just as her husband, her partner, her equal. Years after the crash, someone asked Lena during an interview whether she regretted walking away from the people who betrayed her. She smiled. No. Why? Because I didn't walk away to punish them. She paused. I walked away because I finally realized my life was mine. That answer stayed with me, because it was the truth. Our greatest victory wasn't exposing Ethan. It wasn't defeating Victor. It wasn't building a successful company. It wasn't even surviving the crash. It was waking up one morning and realizing we no longer needed the people who had hurt us to understand our worth. They could regret us. They could remember us. They could tell themselves whatever story made them comfortable. It didn't matter. We had already moved on. And sometimes, late at night, when the house was quiet and the sea was breathing beyond the windows, Lena would reach for my hand. She would smile, and I would think about the woman who once woke up from a terrible crash, able to hear everyone's secrets. The strange power had changed her. The betrayals had changed her. The pain had changed her. But none of those things defined her. She defined herself. And in the end, that was the only secret that mattered.